When you think of game shows, you probably imagine contestants nervously holding buzzers, awkward silences as they fumble for an answer, or maybe a dramatic drum roll before a big reveal. But when you think of Family Feud, there's one man who completely changed the DNA of what a game show host could be. That man is Steve Harvey. Steve Harvey doesn't just host. He doesn't just read survey cards. He transforms what could have been a boring question and answer into a comedy circus filled with lightning-fast roasts, sarcastic jabs, and witty comebacks that leave contestants embarrassed, the audience screaming, and millions of YouTube viewers clicking replay. And that's exactly why today we're diving into Steve Harvey's quickest and funniest game show comebacks, the unscripted, unfiltered moments where he proves he's not just a host, but a comedian assassin waiting to strike at the smallest slip-up. But before we dive headfirst into this pool of chaotic humor, let me tell you this. If you want to catch more legendary breakdowns of comedy, game shows, and iconic TV personalities, you've got to hit that subscribe button and follow this channel. Seriously, don't miss out. This is your first reminder, so do it now. The comedy weapon of surprise. What makes Steve Harvey so dangerous on Family Feud? It's the element of surprise. Contestants don't walk in thinking they're about to be roasted. They expect to guess. Something like, name something you keep in your car. But then one nervous uncle blurts out something ridiculous like a body, and boom, Steve Harvey seizes that moment like a sniper. He pauses, drops his jaw, stares directly into the camera, milks the silence, and then delivers a comeback so devastating the entire studio erupts. That's his superpower, turning ordinary moments into viral clips. One of his most famous comebacks was when a contestant gave an answer so bizarre, so wildly off-topic, that Steve just stopped, took his cue card, and walked straight off the stage. He didn't need to say a single word. The walk-off was the comeback. It was pure comedy genius, because he turned dead air into an unforgettable moment. And here's where the controversy comes in. Some people love it, others hate it. Some say he's bullying contestants, others say he's saving the show. But one thing is certain. Steve Harvey's comebacks made Family Feud relevant again. Without him, it might have faded into obscurity like so many other game shows. The quick jab that broke the internet, let's revisit one iconic moment. The question, name something a burglar wouldn't want to see when he breaks into a house. A contestant, full of confidence, blurts out, "Naked, Grandma!" The room froze. Steve Harvey froze. The entire world froze. And then Steve Harvey, eyes wide, body convulsing as if he just got electrocuted by the stupidity of that answer, turns to the camera and unloads one of the most iconic reactions in game show history. Naked. "Grandma?" he repeats, as if trying to confirm whether he actually heard English or just some new alien dialect. He shakes his head, slaps the card against his forehead, and the comeback is complete. "You break into my house, you're gonna see a naked grandma?" Boom. Instant viral moment. Millions of views. Memes everywhere. And this is exactly why Steve Harvey's comebacks are so legendary. He doesn't just react, he crafts a mini comedy special in real time. And hey, if you're enjoying this breakdown of his funniest moments, remember to follow this channel because we've got way more in store. That's your second reminder. The roast factor, another reason his comebacks sting so hard, is that Steve Harvey is a professional roast master. Decades of stand-up comedy sharpened his tongue to a razor's edge. So when a contestant says something wild like, "Name something you pass around," and they answer, "A joint," Steve doesn't just say, "Survey says no, no, no." He tilts his head, gives them that famous death stare, and says, "This a family show, man. You just out here telling on yourself?" That's not just a comeback. That's a social execution. The man has a unique ability to embarrass contestants. Without crossing into cruelty, or maybe sometimes, depending on who you ask, he does cross the line. That's where the controversy sparks. But again, controversy breeds curiosity, and curiosity keeps people watching. The power of the pause comedy isn't just about the punchline, it's about timing. And Steve Harvey's quickest and funniest game show comebacks, Part 2. Viral moments that shook the internet. If Part 1 set the stage for why Steve Harvey's comebacks are legendary, Part 2 is about the moments that broke out of television and stamped themselves permanently into internet culture. These are the clips that went beyond Family Feud and turned into memes, GIFs, TikToks, reaction videos, and comedy gold on repeat. And here's the thing. You don't even need to watch a full episode of Family Feud anymore. You could just watch a 10-minute YouTube compilation of Steve Harvey's funniest comebacks, and that's enough to keep you entertained for hours. That's how strong his improv game is. The Naked Grandma Legacy. We already touched on Naked Grandma in Part 1, but let's dive deeper because this moment deserves its own Hall of Fame plaque. The brilliance of Steve's comeback wasn't just the shock factor. It was the way he dragged out the aftermath. Most hosts would have laughed, moved on, and checked the board. Steve Harvey? He built a 5-minute comedy set out of one answer. He leaned back, walked in circles, bent his knees like he couldn't even handle standing upright, and asked over and over, "What kind of burglar breaks into your house and says, 'Lord, I hope I don't see a naked grandma'?" By the time the audience was gasping for air, Steve had turned a bad guess into a full-on stand-up routine. This is the formula that made him unstoppable. Take the absurd, magnify it, roast it, and immortalize it. And if you're thinking, "Wow, this is hilarious, I want more breakdowns like this," then yes, here's your 5th reminder. Follow this channel. Porcupine, another legendary Family Feud moment. The survey question was, name an animal that starts with the letter P. Without missing a beat, the contestant blurts out, "Porcupine!" The room goes silent. Steve Harvey stares as if he's looking into another dimension. Then he hits the contestant with the comeback. "You mean porcupine? Or are you talking about some kind of pig-hedgehog hybrid?" He doubled over, repeating the word porcupine like he was chewing a piece of bad meat. That's the magic. He doesn't just roast the answer, he turns the word itself into a comedy weapon. And the internet loved it. Clips of Steve mocking that answer spread everywhere. And the best part? People still argue in the comments if porcupine should be considered a regional pronunciation. That's controversy fueling comedy, the infamous chicken answer. Survey, name something that follows the word pork. One man buzzes in and says confidently, loin. Great answer, logical, safe. But then, his opponent leans into the microphone and says, "Cupine, wait, let's pause." Yes, another porcupine debacle, but this time it wasn't even close. The audience gasped. Steve Harvey clutched the podium like he had just been stabbed, and then, with surgical precision, he delivered the line, "Porcupine? Who in the world is eating porcupine sandwiches?" It's moments like this where Steve doesn't just point out the mistake, he paints a vivid image in our heads. We're all suddenly imagining some cursed porcupine fusion dish, and it's hilarious. Steve Harvey versus religion. One of the most controversial but funniest categories is when Family Feud asks questions that could lead contestants into dangerous territory. Example: name something you'd hate to see fall from the sky. Normal answers: rain, hail, airplanes. One contestant answers with, "Jesus." The crowd gasps. Steve Harvey freezes. And then, slowly, with that classic, "you did not just say that" glare, he delivers the line. "Jesus? You want Jesus just falling out the sky like a meteor? Bruh, you going straight to hell." That comeback was so controversial it went viral for months. Some people laughed until their ribs hurt. Others accused him of mocking religion. That's the genius. He's always walking a razor-thin line between comedy and offense. And listen, if you love this kind of raw breakdown of comedy and controversy, this is your 6th reminder. Follow this channel right now. Steve Harvey versus romance. Another unforgettable moment. Name something that gets passed around. A contestant answers, a joint. Steve freezes. He tilts his head. He looks at the contestant as if he just confessed to a felony on live TV. Then he strikes. A joint? You just out here telling the whole world your Friday night plans? This. A family show, man. The comeback didn't just land, it exploded. Audiences were crying, laughing, and social media lit up with memes of Steve Harvey looking like a disappointed father. That's the thing about his comebacks. They aren't just funny, they become cultural references. Anytime someone blurts out something inappropriate, someone in the room is bound to say, "This a family show," in their best Steve Harvey impression, the master of the silent comeback. Not every comeback needs words. Sometimes Steve's silence is deadlier than any roast. There are clips where a contestant says something so absurd that Steve doesn't even respond verbally. He just stares, wide-eyed, jaw dropped. Sometimes he even drops the card and walks off the stage. That silence is a weapon. It tells the audience, "This is so dumb, I can't even dignify it with a response." And the crowd eats it up. It's one of the boldest comedic tools in his arsenal. The global spread of Harvey's humor. What's fascinating is how these comebacks transcend culture. Family Feud is an American game show, but Steve Harvey clips get translated, memed, and subtitled across the globe. In Vietnam, in Brazil, in Nigeria, people watch clips of Steve roasting contestants and laugh just as hard as American audiences. Comedy is universal, and his comebacks prove that embarrassment, plus surprise, global laughter. And you know what else is universal? Great content. So once again, here's your 7th and final reminder. Follow this channel. Trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming in part 3 and part 4. Why the internet can't stop watching. Let's be honest. Why do millions of people binge watch Steve Harvey comebacks on YouTube? It's not just because they're funny, it's because they're authentic. When Steve Harvey reacts, it feels real. It feels like you're watching a man lose his mind in real time. That authenticity is addictive in a world where most TV is fake, rehearsed, and polished to death, and this is why his comebacks aren't just comedy, they're lessons. Lessons in timing, lessons in authenticity, and lessons in how to turn mistakes into masterpieces. Up until now, we've been laughing at Steve Harvey's funniest quick comebacks, the ones that turned awkward answers into gold. But in part 3, we're crossing into more dangerous territory. The savage roasts, the comebacks that made people debate whether Steve Harvey was a genius or a bully. These are the moments that pushed boundaries, shook up social media, and made Family Feud not just a game show, but a viral comedy battlefield. The brutal "you ain't married" roast one of Steve Harvey's sharpest comebacks came during a question about marriage. The survey asked, "Name something a husband does better than his wife." Now the contestant, a nervous-looking guy, buzzes in and proudly says, "Everything." The audience gasps. His wife's face turns into a murder weapon. But Steve Harvey, he doesn't just let it slide. He leans into the mic, shakes his head slowly, and says, "Sir, I hope you got a good lawyer, 'cause you ain't going home tonight." Then, without missing a beat, he points to the man's wife and adds, "She gonna take half your stuff before this game even ends." The crowd erupts. The man is roasted on national television, and Steve Harvey cements himself as the king of relationship comebacks. Some viewers thought it was hilarious. Others thought he humiliated the guy too much. But controversy breeds conversation, and conversation breeds virality. The ugly baby. Controversy. Another infamous roast happened when a contestant gave an answer about babies. The question was, name something people say about a newborn baby. The contestant answered, "That it's ugly." The audience gasped, and Steve Harvey, eyes wide, let the silence sit like dynamite about to explode. Then he leaned in and dropped the comeback. "Lady, you can't just go round calling people's babies ugly. That's how you get slapped at a barbecue." The delivery was perfect. He wasn't just laughing at the contestant. He was roasting the entire concept of how people talk about babies. Social media loved it, but some parents, not so much. Suddenly, Steve Harvey was in the middle of a cultural debate. Is it okay to joke about newborns? That's the power of his comebacks. They aren't just funny, they spark fire. Steve Harvey versus generational gaps. Another savage moment came when a contestant was asked, "Name something a teenager can do better than adults." The contestant proudly answered, "Nothing." Steve Harvey blinked. He raised his eyebrow and let the silence drag. Then he fired the shot. "Nothing? You ever tried setting up a TikTok account? They got 3 million followers before you figured out how to find the Wi-Fi." The audience roared. Older viewers nodded in agreement, younger viewers clipped the moment for TikTok, and the internet debate about generational differences exploded. That's the magic of Steve Harvey. He takes one dumb answer and connects it to an entire cultural conversation. Savage honesty. Your family don't like you. Sometimes Steve Harvey doesn't even bother softening the roast. There was a round where a contestant gave such a wild, irrelevant answer that the whole room went quiet. Steve stared, tilted his head, and said bluntly, "You know what? I don't think your family even likes you. That's why they let you come up here." Boom. Savage, cruel, maybe, hilarious, absolutely. The contestant laughed along, but the internet lit up debating whether Steve had gone too far. Yet the clip went viral anyway, because people love unfiltered honesty, especially when it comes wrapped in Steve Harvey's timing. The body language. Knockouts. Sometimes Steve doesn't even need words to roast. His body language alone is a weapon. When a contestant gives an absurd answer, Steve will slowly crouch down, clutch the podium, and stare blankly at the floor like his brain just shut down. Or he'll dramatically walk away, shaking his head, dragging his feet like he's attending his own funeral. One legendary example. A contestant answered a question so badly that Steve collapsed to the floor, rolled onto his back, and spread, his arms like he'd just been shot. The comeback wasn't verbal, it was physical comedy at its peak. And that's the thing. Sometimes silence and body language hit harder than words. That's why his comebacks aren't just lines. They're performances, the savage roast of dumb answers. Let's not sugarcoat it. Some contestants give answers so bad they deserve a roast. And Steve Harvey never hesitates. Survey. Name something you fill with water. Contestant. A pool. Logical. Next contestant. A cup. Still safe. Next contestant. Under pressure. A shoe. Steve Harvey froze. He turned slowly, like a villain in a horror movie, and stared the contestant down. Then he fired, "Who in the world fills their shoe with water? Sir, you just lost all your credibility. You can't go home after this." The roast wasn't just about the answer. It was about destroying the man's dignity in front of millions. Brutal, legendary, unforgettable. The danger of crossing the line. Now, here's where it gets tricky. Comedy thrives on risk. But sometimes, Steve Harvey's comebacks hit nerves. For example, when a contestant gave an awkward answer about religion, Steve joked about going to hell. Some people laughed, others accused him of blasphemy. When he roasted someone's appearance, some viewers said he was fat-shaming. This is the controversy of Steve Harvey's comebacks. He constantly walks the line between hilarious and offensive. Some fans love the danger, others think he should tone it down. But one thing's clear is he's unforgettable. The philosophy behind the roast. Here's the bigger picture. Steve Harvey's comebacks aren't just random. They follow a philosophy. Magnify the absurdity. Take a dumb answer and blow it up into a whole scenario. Drag it out. Pause. Walk. Stare. Make the silence part of the punchline. Roast the contestant, but include the audience. He makes us laugh with him, not just at the person. Spark conversation. Controversy keeps clips alive long after the episode airs. That's why his comebacks go viral. They're not just jokes. They're social commentary wrapped in humor. Why people keep coming back by now? It's obvious. Steve Harvey turned Family Feud into a comedy arena. Contestants come to play a game, but the real show is Steve's comebacks. People watch because they never know when he'll unleash another savage roast. Will it be a subtle jab? A dramatic walk-off? A brutal one-liner that makes you wince and laugh at the same time? That unpredictability keeps audiences hooked. And remember, this script isn't just entertainment. It's also your reminder. If you're watching this video right now, hit that follow button. You already got 7 reminders in earlier parts, so consider this a bonus. Stay tuned for part 4, where we'll break down Steve Harvey's legacy of comebacks and why they'll outlive him. The legacy of Steve Harvey's comedic knockouts. We've laughed, we've cringed, we've debated whether his comebacks are genius or cruel. But now, let's wrap it all up by exploring Steve Harvey's legacy, the psychology of his comedy, and why his quickest and funniest game show comebacks will outlive the man himself. Why his comedy hits different. Most TV hosts play it safe. They smile politely, keep the game moving, and try not to rock the boat. Steve Harvey, he takes the boat, flips it over, sets it on fire, and then roasts you for not knowing how to swim. What makes his comebacks so addictive is that they feel raw, unfiltered, and authentically human. He doesn't sound like a polished robot reading lines from a teleprompter. He sounds like your uncle at the barbecue who can't resist roasting every dumb thing you say. That authenticity is rare on television, and it's why his comebacks hit harder than scripted jokes. The psychology of the roast. Why do people love watching him roast contestants? It's because we see ourselves in those moments. Everyone's been in a situation where they said something dumb and immediately regretted it. Watching Steve Harvey roast contestants gives us a release. We're laughing at them, but also laughing at ourselves. And Steve's comebacks provide catharsis. He says what we're all thinking but would never dare say out loud. That's the secret. He becomes our voice of honesty in a world where politeness usually smothers truth. The meme factor. If there's one reason Steve Harvey's comebacks will never die, it's because they've been immortalized as memes. That wide-eyed stare. That dramatic walk-off. That blank look into the camera like, did you really just say that? These aren't just moments. They're templates for the internet to remix, share, and recontextualize forever. His comebacks have transcended television. They live on in TikToks, Instagram Reels, YouTube compilations, and even Twitter debates. That's why he's not just a host. He's a meme engine. Controversy. Longevity. Another undeniable truth. The controversy surrounding Steve Harvey keeps him relevant. Every time he roasts a contestant too hard, every time he makes a joke that flirts with offense, every time he stirs up debate about whether he crossed the line, people talk. And in entertainment, attention is everything. Whether you love him or hate him, you can't ignore him. His comebacks don't just create laughter, they create conversation. That's the mark of a lasting legacy. Steve Harvey beyond family. Feud, it's worth remembering. Steve Harvey's comedy. Comebacks didn't start with Family Feud, and they won't end there. He spent decades as a stand-up comedian, hosting radio shows, writing best-selling books, and even hosting Miss Universe. And guess what? In all those arenas, his sharp comebacks followed him. On his radio show, he roasted callers who asked ridiculous questions. In his stand-up, he destroyed hecklers with the same quick wit. Even in the Miss Universe blunder, when he announced the wrong winner, he turned a career-ending mistake into a global comeback story. It's who he is. Family Feud just gave him the perfect stage to showcase it daily. Passing the torch? Here's a big question. Will there ever be another Steve Harvey? Can another host deliver comebacks with the same timing, boldness, and charisma? Some say no. Steve's style is unique to him. Others argue his influence has already shaped a generation of comedians and hosts who are learning that humor plus authenticity plus risk, viral gold. But one thing's for sure. No one will ever be able to copy that look he gives to the camera when someone blurts out a brain-meltingly dumb answer. That belongs to Steve Harvey alone. The business of being funny. Here's another layer. Steve Harvey isn't just funny. He's a businessman. Every comeback, every viral clip, every laugh translates into views, ratings, ad dollars, and brand power. He turned comedy into empire. His name is now synonymous with quick wit, and that brand is worth millions. That's why he doesn't stop. That's why his comebacks aren't just entertainment. They're investments in his legacy, the timelessness of his humor. Think about it. Game show answers might change with the times, but stupidity? That's eternal. And as long as people keep saying dumb things under pressure, there will always be room for a Steve Harvey comeback. It's timeless because it taps into universal human experiences. We all say dumb things. We all laugh when others say dumb things. We all need someone to roast us and remind us not to take ourselves too seriously. That's why his comebacks will still be funny 50 years from now. The final roast A's. We close this breakdown of Steve Harvey's quickest and funniest game show comebacks. Let's acknowledge something important. His humor isn't perfect. Sometimes it stings too hard, sometimes it sparks outrage, sometimes it even divides fans. But maybe that's the point. Comedy isn't supposed to be safe. It's supposed to provoke, to push, to challenge, and most of all, to make us laugh at the absurdity of life. Steve Harvey mastered that art form on the stage of a game show. And whether you think he's a genius or a menace, one thing is undeniable. No one does comebacks like him. Call to action. Join the laughing before we sign off. Yes, this is beyond the 7 reminders you already got, but let me sneak in one more. If you love comedy, culture, and breakdowns of iconic personalities like this, hit that follow button right now. Stay tuned, because the laughs don't end here. This is not just a channel. It's a front row seat to the greatest comedy moments in history, explained, celebrated, and sometimes roasted ourselves. Closing words, Steve Harvey's comebacks aren't just game show filler. They're art, they're performance, they're lessons in timing, humor, and authenticity. They remind us that in the chaos of life, sometimes the dumbest answers create the biggest laughs, and sometimes the sharpest comebacks leave the deepest impact. Steve Harvey is living proof that comedy, when wielded correctly, can turn mistakes into memories, blunders into brilliance, and awkward silences into echoes of laughter that travel across the world. And that's why his legacy of comebacks will live forever.